Are you an insectophobe? Well, if you are, then you may be in the wrong place right now. Unless you're also a masochist, of course. But before we begin, you need to ask yourself if you can really handle the very weirdest of the creepiest crawlies the world has to offer. Or are you just going to start feeling their little feet tiptoeing across your pillow as you sleep, climbing up your limbs as you watch this video? I dare you to stick around. From a bad dream of a bug with hooks for teeth to an insect that cannibalizes its mating partners, here are 20 insects you won't believe actually exist. Number 20. Antarctic scale worm. Good grief. Even in your shadowy nightmare brain, you probably couldn't have mustered a creature quite so horrifying and messed up. With a head like an alien, literally the xenomorph from the Alien franchise, I kid you not, and a set of actual teeth inside of its monster mouth, once you've seen the Antarctic scale worm, I'm sorry, but there's no unseeing it. This creepy creature lives in Antarctic waters, but rather unsettlingly, not much is actually known about this worm. Can you even call it a worm? It has a little in common with most things you think of as worms, but how many other worms have you seen that go around sporting a gold fringe that looks like the trim on your grandmother's lampshades? And take a look at this animal's barb-like teeth. On top of that, as if all the Antarctic scale worm's unfortunate looks weren't enough, these things are pretty big. They measure at least 8 inches long and 4 inches wide. Oh, and by the way, their head isn't really a head, not in the way that you would expect. First of all, it doesn't have any eyes, but it doesn't really need them down in the deep, dark waters of Antarctica. Secondly, the head is actually a retractable proboscis, a sort of sucking mouth appendage thing that unfurls itself and catches its prey, which it then tears to bits with those horrific hooked teeth. Then when it's finished, it just folds its head back in and goes around waggling its golden frills like it's Mardi Gras. Before we go on, like this video, smash the subscribe button, and click the notification bell right now, or this centipede will crawl on your face when you're sleeping. Number 19. The hammerhead worm. Now, here's a worm that looks more like you might imagine a worm. However, it's actually a psycho. And a toxic one at that. These guys contain tetrodotoxin, the same stuff as the notoriously poisonous pufferfish. The hammerhead worm has a weird flat fan-shaped head, a kind of hammerhead obviously, and its gross body is long and kind of flattened. And depending on where they live, it might be brown, which gives it a distinctive shiny dog poo appearance. Or it might be a snazzy striped version. Either way, these worms are weird. The hammerhead worm is an invasive species. Wherever this bully rocks up, it takes over with ruthless violence of a Viking invasion, and actually it's probably even worse than that. These worms are not only predatory carnivores, but they're also cannibals. Oh, how jolly. So the hammerhead kills and eats slugs, insect larvae, and they also pose an existential threat to the earthworm. These creepy crawlies are causing enormous damage to the population of the humble old earthworm. They especially love to gorge on these unfortunate creatures, and frankly, their table manners do leave a lot to be desired. Hammerheads get a hold of their prey, push it against a surface, and spew out a load of gross slime all over it, immobilizing their dinner. Then the hammerhead really goes to town, extending its pharynx, that's a sort of suction pump, and then gobs out a load of digestive juices that liquefy the prey. And once it's turned the insect into a sick slurry, it slurps it all down. Oh yeah, and if all that isn't quite disgusting enough, once the hammerhead's done digesting, its mouth then becomes its butt. What a charmer. Number 18. The scorpion fly. Now I hope that all this insect chat isn't bugging you. But next up, we have a weird and wonderful mini beast with a face that only a mother could love. This little insect is named for its curled up tail that is reminiscent of that of the scorpion, but unlike its namesake, this one's tail is not a stinger. In the male scorpion fly, it's actually part of their reproductive stuff. At the other end of the flying insect is a long red beak that it uses to eat with, and in the middle, it wears a snazzy yellow and black striped combo. It makes quite the impression, doesn't it? You can find these flies in their native Europe, mostly hanging around in gardens and hedgerows, stealing the contents of spiders' webs, and generally snaffling up dead insects all over the show. Delicious. But before you go off screaming and running for the hills, even if this guy looks dangerous and has a badass name to match, did nobody ever tell you about books and covers? So just stop judging, please. The scorpion fly actually poses no danger to humans whatsoever. It's a big softie and is not in the least bit interested in you. Number 17. Goliath Beetle. Oh man, these are some aptly named creatures. The biggest and heaviest beetles on the planet, in fact. Goliath beetles are a creepy, crawly nightmare. If your nightmare is big fat beetles, that is. Goliath beetles are crazy strong. These big bugs are believed to be able to lift a load that's 850 times heavier than its own weight. So that's quite a lot. They're native to Southeast Africa, preferring the warm climate and dense rainforest in that region. These bugs, while they also look pretty cool, they have a snazzy array of colors and display distinctive patterns on their back. Male Goliaths also have a horn on their heads, which they use for fighting other males in fierce battles over the females during mating season. It can all get rather heated in the insect world when creepy crawlies are just trying to make babies, although quite why any of these guys are so keen to get down is a bit of a mystery. The male Goliath beetle will be so very spent following mating that he dies from all the excitement. Number 16. Leafhopper. Leafhopper is the colloquial word for a whole group of insects in the big cicada bug family. There are literally thousands of species of leafhoppers, and they exist in every corner of the world. These frisky little bugs measure around 1/4 to 1/2 inch long, and they're slim-bodied with a blunt head, and their wings are kind of a wedge shape. They're often seen in the green or yellow varieties of color, but this does vary quite a bit between species. But what makes these critters a pest is their habit of destroying plants that they're hopping around on. They use their piercing, sucking mouth parts to slurp sap from the plants. When they bite into a leaf, they release saliva, which contains enzymes that break down and damage the leaf, causing it to shrivel up and turn brown. For something so teeny-weeny, these creatures really do bug the heck out of some plants. Number 15. Hercules beetles. Although not officially the largest of beetles, that prize goes to the Goliath, of course. The Hercules beetle is not some kind of puny little insect at the same time. These colossal creepy crawlies can grow to the size of an adult man's hand, which is just the titchiest bit alarming, especially when you chuck in the fact that these creatures are sporting a rather alien-esque set of horns that work in tandem with a second set to form a kind of claw. Ugh. The females don't have horns, unfortunately, and they tend to be a bit smaller as well. However, they can give off such strong vibes that if a male of the species is set just in the general vicinity of a female, they can seek her out and immediately orient towards her. She gives off such a powerful pheromone that she's utterly resistible to the guys. Out there in the world, there's such a thing as the beetle enthusiast trade. To us uninitiated, it sounds like a bizarre and mysterious cult, but these bug fans are especially fond of the magnificent Hercules beetle and will happily part with up to $700 for the privilege of getting their bug-loving fingers on one for their collections. Number 14. Camel spiders. The stories that follow the creepy camel spider around the deserts of the Middle East are full of murder and intrigue. If you were to believe everything that you heard about these insects, you might be led to think that they were gigantic, with the ability to sprint as fast as a human, that they gorge themselves on camels' insides, and murder sleeping soldiers with reckless abandon. They sound insane, don't they? But, like so many of the biggest mythical tales, although they're based in truth, they're also fairly well padded with a little bit of creative license. However, there's always a little grain of truth in these tales from folklore. These insects are often photographed using tricksy camera techniques that make the creature seem so much bigger than it actually is. Pesky internet making things up again. In fact, these bugs are only about 6 inches long, so that instantly makes some of the stories about them seem much less scary now, doesn't it? Though there are all of those spooky ideas out there, it turns out that camel spiders aren't actually deadly to humans. They would give you a nasty bite, but it's unlikely to do you in. However, if you're a bird or a rodent or even another insect, this thing's probably going to kill you and eat you, using their powerful jaws to chop their victim into a gory, pulpy mess, spewing digestive juices to liquefy flesh, and then sucking that delicious smoothie into their stomachs. Delicious. Number 13. Puss mouth. Now, this large white and gray moth is named for its supposed furry, pussy-like appearance, like a cat apparently. The puss mouth is a British creature who hangs around in ancient hedgerows and open woodlands, feeding on poplars and willows, and especially enjoys the lower growth and suckers of the aspen or goat willow trees. Sounds tasty, doesn't it? But perhaps the most bizarre aspect of this insect's existence is its extraordinary transformation. It goes through many stages, from an egg into a small young caterpillar, black with bright red eyes and 2 long pink tails. This caterpillar will then feed a while, until it outgrows its first outfit and will shed it in a series of shuddering movements, emerging as a thicker green caterpillar with a bright bold head. Then it's gonna creep and crawl around some more, feeding and growing larger, repeating the process over and over until large enough to take itself off to build a cocoon. The green soft caterpillar slowly hardening into a brown shell as the creature grows within. Then, the puss moth finally emerges from its shell, unfurling and stretching its soft furry wings like a hatching alien blinking in the daylight. Number 12. Elephant hawk moth. Just why is this called the elephant hawk moth is anyone's guess. It bears no apparent resemblance to either an elephant or a hawk. But what it does look like, however, is a party moth. With its olive green coloring accentuated by bright pink stripes, the elephant hawk moth actually looks a lot like your grandmother's curtains. It is one snappy dresser, if the 70s were still here, that was. This thing's pretty snazzy when it's still a caterpillar as well. It features a series of eye-shaped patterns along its length in order to deter potential predators, because eyes are famously disgusting. Actually, it's to make it appear as though it's a larger and significantly less edible animal. The adult moth has a built-in defense mechanism of its own. When threatened, it can retract its head and puff out its neck into a bulbous shape, topped with fake eyes. These big eyeballs are generally enough to put off the less determined predators and has gone some way to make these moths seem scarier and more dangerous than they actually are. In fact, they're not even poisonous, so it's all a bit of an act. They do like to roleplay as a snake, but that's all. Number 11. Giant long-legged katydid. As much as these outsized critters look as if they have crept off the set of a 1950s B-movie, this actually is not, as far as we know, an invasion by an alien force. Although, when you look at the bizarre, long-legged gait of the giant katydid, you would be forgiven for at least wondering. This family of bugs contains over 6,400 different species, and they're often called long-horned grasshoppers, but they actually share more features with crickets. The body of the giant long-legged katydid is perfectly adapted to the forest environment where they hail from. They can grow up to 6 inches long in the body, which is camouflaged to appear almost indiscernible from a leaf. Their long legs are characteristic in this species. You know, it's in the name and all. But despite their limbs, oddly enough, they're actually a bit rubbish at jumping. The same goes for flying, which they can do, but apparently they mainly choose not to, favoring instead a creepy scuttle and long periods of just standing around looking like a leaf. The male of the species not only has the biggest testes for their relative body size of any creature in the animal kingdom, the big balls of the giant katydid account for a gargantuan 14% of their total body weight. But these guys are also incredibly loud, especially at night. Males are able to produce a high-pitched sound with organs that they rub together on their wings, and they're believed to be the loudest insects in the world. Number 10. The thorn bug. This one is a weird-looking bug. The adaptation of this creepy crawly makes it extremely good at hiding. Shaped exactly like a thorn, hence the name bestowed upon it, these insects can hide more or less in plain sight and be all but invisible to potential predators. The thorn bug, also sometimes known as tree hopper, is the master of disguise, having a pointy, sharp spine on its back and a mix of different colors in its patterning, which helps add an additional layer of intrigue to their camouflaging potential. These creepers have an unusual way of eating. They poke holes in tree branches and slurp the sap from inside. Their hole-poking habits are also brought into use when laying eggs, as the insect will make cuts in plants to place their eggs inside. Thorn bugs can be pretty destructive to some varieties of trees. What with all the slashing and sucking and whatnot, their feeding and breeding habits are often the cause of trees losing extensive foliage or even killing off branches altogether. It's pretty brutal for such an imperceptible little bug. Oh, and don't even think about agreeing to a game of hide and seek with a thorn bug. They're too sneaky, and you'll never find them. Number 9. Australian walking stick. The large, brown Australian walking stick insect has evolved a particular kind of protective camouflage. They've spent so long eating the leaves of the eucalyptus tree and mooching around on its branches that they've turned into a part of the tree themselves. It's a great form of defense against predators if they can't spot you amongst the leaves, and these insects will curl themselves up till they resemble a dried leaf. Well, they can't eat you if they can't find you, right? There are some major differences between male and female walking sticks, although they both still look decidedly twig-like. Males are long and thin and actually have wings. They do fly from time to time, but the females have a much thicker middle due to all the eggs that they're generally lugging around, and they only have a pair of useless, flightless wings. Just as well, the Australian walking stick looks a lot like an alien when you see it up close. And as they grow, they do distinctly spooky things with a bit of an X-Files vibe. These insects shed their exoskeleton when they outgrow it, and then they usually eat their own dead skin outfit. Number 8. The giant weta. Almost extinct, the wetapunga is a huge insect, a kind of flightless cricket that was found to have survived only on the island of Little Barrier off the coast of New Zealand's North Island. These amazingly rare insects are thought to have been victims of a messed up food chain where they were overrun by predators. In the first half of the 20th century, there were loads of feral cats on Little Barrier Island, and these cats controlled the population of rodents, especially the Polynesian rat. So, when people came along and decided to rid the island of its feral cat population, they then basically invited the rats, or Kior as they're called, to go wild. The Kior gobbled up the weta all night long, and then during the day they were eaten by saddleback birds. It's no wonder these guys nearly packed it all in. Then, as what usually happens, some people figured out what was going on and then decided to rid the rats. the numbers of weta slowly increased, and the insect has now been introduced in other predator-free environments. Now, I don't know, but all of this fiddling about with the food chain seems a little bit risky to me. Are we all going to be overrun by a ton of gigantic insects in the future? Number 7. The wheel bug. Apart from the very distinctive appearance of the wheel bug, these little critters are harboring a secret weapon. Their other name is the assassin bug, which might offer up a clue to these creepy crawlies' dark side. The wheel bug possesses a weird sort of crest that's shaped a bit like a wheel or a gear. I see what they did there with the name. The serrated disc gives the bug a menacing kind of Mad Max armored look. And this particular feature is utterly unique amongst insects in the United States, so if you do see a wheel bug, then it's easy to tell what it actually is. These bugs reach about 1.5 inches in length when they're fully matured, but if you do see one, it's actually best not to pet it, because these insects are biters, and nasty ones at that. The way the wheel bug captures and consumes its prey is fairly unpleasant. The creatures use their beak-like mouth parts to inject it with a mix of enzymes that will kill and begin to digest the unfortunate prey from the inside out. If the wheel bug bites a human, it doesn't kill, but it does hurt a whole heck of a lot. According to those unfortunate enough to have experienced a bite, the initial sensation isn't all that bad. Rather, it's a bit weird, like an electric shock. But it's what follows that makes a nip from one of these creatures so unpleasant. Within a minute, there's a burning sensation that spreads throughout the area adjacent to the bite. And within 5 minutes, the pain is really bad. And then it's just gonna stay like that for several hours, followed by a throbbing ache for days on end. How lovely. Number 6. The Brazilian tree hopper. The kooky little Brazilian tree hopper can only be described as looking like a cicada wearing a novelty hat which is decorated with a couple pairs of hairy gonads. No, seriously, this is one strange looking creature. As far as scientists have been able to determine, the tree hopper's headgear seems to serve no obvious purpose. Although the bug's helicopter-style bongly gongs appear to look like eyes, they have no apparent vision-enhancing ability. This appendage may even be entirely ornamental. Maybe this is the latest in stylish insect headwear. Who are we to say? Or perhaps the weird bug is picking up some kind of signals with those antennae. An alien messaging system, perhaps. It definitely has all the looks of an extraterrestrial life form. But what do you reckon these strange globes are for? Let us know your ideas about the tree hopper's bonnet in the comments below. Number 5. The Titan Beetle. At about 6.5 inches long, the Titan beetle is bigger than your average bug. Oh, and this is a very big bug indeed. But strangely, for something so obviously massive, very little is actually known about these creatures and their habits. Titans live in the humid, wet atmosphere of South American rainforests and are able to fly, but are too heavy to take off from the ground. So these massive beetles have powerful legs that are built to climb trees, and they clamber up to a height before launching themselves into flight. Although there is still a whole load of mystery surrounding the Titan, it is believed that when the weather is at its hottest and most moist, they will take flight and look for a mate. They seem to do this by following the scent of pheromones, which these bugs all release into the air for attracting a mating partner. But when it comes to the larvae of these colossal critters, the mystery actually deepens. There have been no known sightings of the Titan beetle grub. No humans have any idea what they actually look like or where they may even be found. There is speculation that the larvae must be hidden inside decaying wood, which they feed on, possibly for several years before they reach maturity and become a fully fledged beetle. In the unlikely event that you're wandering around the rainforest and happen upon a Titan beetle, be warned, these things bite really hard. Their extremely strong jaws are able to deliver a nip that can snap a pencil in half. Number 4. The Filbert Weevil. This tiny, teeny little creature has a curiously distinctive face, with big black eyes and a very long sort of snout called a rostrum at its center. There are thousands of different types of weevils out there, but they're mostly so very titchy that we never even notice them. Each species has its own particular feeding habits, and this one, the filbert weevil, can generally be found making a pest of itself and munching on oak trees, specifically on acorns. Despite the name, these weevils are not generally found on filbert or hazelnut trees. They existed in North America long before the hazelnut was imported from Europe, so just how they got lumbered with the name is a bit of an oddity. But the damage that weevils do across their favorite munching grounds is what is cause for concern. These bugs can wipe out entire harvests, either in the fields or in storage. Fortunately for the cute, furry little filbert weevil though, the mighty oak is not generally a cash crop, so a bit of destructive weeviling isn't all that much of a problem. Unless, that is, you're especially upset by the evisceration of acorns. Number 3. Devil's flower mantis. Perhaps the most famous species of praying mantis, the devil's flower mantis is also one of the largest and sneakiest. Yes, this insect's special skill is pretending to be a flower, hanging around looking all leafy, just lying in wait for some poor unsuspecting dope to wander by, and then revealing its murderous streak in a violent bloodbath that swiftly devours their prey before it even has a chance to die properly. These creepy insects look as though they've been designed for a sci-fi movie. Their alien-eyed heads and intensely sinister bodies, with all their terrifying gestures, just makes the mantis perfect nightmare inspiration. Add to that the female mantis's famous proclivity towards post-coital cannibalism, and it's no wonder that these incredible insects have a bit of a reputation. Yes, that's right. In case you didn't know, the female will mate with a male mantis, and then, once the deed is done, she'll bite off his head and eat him. And it turns out that this seemingly psychotic behavior may actually make it more likely that the mantis will reproduce. The female one, obviously, because, well, the male is dead after all. As well as all the regular murdering stuff that we know about the mantis, these creatures have a whole load of folklore attached to them as well. Depending on where you are in the world and what you happen to believe in, finding a mantis in or near your home can mean either good or bad luck. It could mean that angels are watching over you. They are praying after all, but it's generally accepted that if you hurt or kill a mantis, then you're going to be cursed. Number 2. Priotinotus gangus. This thing is so intensely creepy, it's already giving me nightmares. This insect is like a messed up science project, with the head of a moth, a red caterpillar-esque middle, and then 4 centipede-like legs poking out of its rear end. You really have to see it to believe it. And even then, you might not. Found in countries across Asia and in some parts of Australia, the gangus might look like a mutant, but it's actually just a moth. A flippin' freaky one, that is. These moths hang around in pomegranate trees, causing all kinds of mayhem with their insatiable larvae feeding on everything in sight. But what are these odd body parts all about then? Well, it would seem that those pulsating, dangly legs that are wiggling around where its butt should be are scent-producing organs. That's where these creepy crawlies make an irresistible pheromone that's designed to attract all the lady gangus moths to come and get it on. It would have to be a potent potion though. This unfortunate guy is no oil painting after all. Number 1. Alligator bug. From one end, this looks like a regular old bug. You know, the usual wings and legs, standard bug stuff. But when you get to the thing's head, that's a whole different story indeed. The alligator bug, also known as the peanut bug, is apparently extremely tasty to all other animals of the rainforest. So the little critter has had to develop a few unusual adaptations in order to survive. It has a whole bunch of different defense mechanisms built into its buggy body. First of all, the alligator bug is a particularly well camouflaged insect, with markings and coloring that help it to blend right into its environment. But it really must be so very delicious, because this bug also has to utilize a lot of other safety features to defend itself against its predators. That massive peanutty alligator-shaped head is another one of those mechanisms, supposed to make the little bug look like a big scary snake and not a tasty little snack. If the predator isn't fooled by all of that though, then the alligator bug's head isn't really where it keeps its brain and whatnot. It's actually hollow and detachable. So the theory is that if the predator bites down on the fake peanut, then the bug can actually use that sneaky trick as an opportunity to scarp her off. However, if that doesn't work, these insects have some lovely big eye patterns on their wings, so they can flash those at their attacker in hopes of scaring them away. If all else fails, the alligator bug is harboring a stinky secret weapon. It can release a spray of foul-smelling liquid, which is as disgustingly pungent as a skunk's noxious odor. At the very least, that has got to take the edge off of the appetite of even the most persistent predator. So there you go. What a lot of weird bugs, and that's just the tip of the insect iceberg. There are actually estimated to be over 10 million different types of insects on planet Earth, so who knows what actually may be out there. Let me know what you think about it all in the comments below. Also check out the other cool stuff showing up on the screen, and I'll see you next time.